Hi everyone. It's really not easy to even talk about what spirituality means. To me, spirituality is about love and peace and honesty and a deep sense of connection with the world. That also, I believe, must include ourselves. One of the most important questions we can ask is, who am I? Who am I really? And what is peace? Another really powerful question, in my opinion, is what is love? In our increasingly divided world, I believe spirituality can bring us together in our love for what we see as sacred. And something really deep connects us exactly in that place. In our relationships, what we see sacred. In our aloneness, in our solitude, what we see sacred. When we look out into the nature, what we see sacred. The love for animals, each other, nature. Um, to me, spirituality is about connection and finding the deeper truth about one's own experience in the moment. And unfortunately, in the name of spirituality, in our consumerist society, there are so many things that have absolutely nothing to do with spirituality. So I think spirituality is getting a bad name sometimes. We might think being spiritual means having a smile on our faces all the time, or always being this incredibly kind person, or some kind of losing ourselves in some kind of detached, aloof state of nothing matters, I don't care, nothing touches me, or this kind of transcendent bliss that's disconnected from the things that are actually happening in the world or in one's life. To me, that's not mature, grounded, thoroughly deep spirituality. To me, that's just a misunderstanding. Another kind of spirituality could include angel cards, tarot, um, sign readings, and what's your sign, and everything, and overly excessive indulgence and fixation with those things. Um, Crystals, even Reiki, things like that. And there might be good use of these things, but as long as there's no depth understanding, and to me, a depth understanding in spirituality means we are asking the big questions and really taking our time in self-reflection, and we're keeping our eyes open also in our relationships. I believe psychotherapy and spirituality can help each other. And this is the most important and interesting thing for me in my life, the intersection of high quality, depth psychology shadow work, body centered, emotion focused, trauma informed, and profound spirituality. What is the intersection in between the two? How can they benefit each other? That's exactly where I think we can find a lot of answers. Also for ourselves, individually in our lives, in our relationships, as well as in our society. There are so many problems today in our society. To simply focusing on one's own enlightenment or awakening as if it has no connection at all with the larger whole, to me that's delusional spirituality. We need to look at the personal, relational, social, and spiritual. I think this wider perspective needs to include all these different dimensions. And the personal, of course, includes the physical. And all these layers, they also include the emotional. And it's really unfortunate because a lot of people get into spirituality because they want to experience inner peace. And yet, they are not aware that to get there actually involves encounters with our conditioning, with our traumas, developmental needs, unmet needs, with the wounded child in us. It must include all of that. A spirituality that is not including in its embrace, in its perspective, deep psychological work, shadow work, looking at emotional conditioning, even gender conditioning. That's a kind of spirituality that's not truly serving us. And unfortunately, that's a really widespread type of spirituality. Today, in our consumerist market economy, spirituality has been hijacked for a long time with the shallowness of our culture, unfortunately. And of course, psychotherapy as well. So these two modalities, these two ways of living or approach or attitude or lenses to look at reality, the best of those can be combined. And I love that. And those perspectives have been helping me tremendously in my own life. I used to be so confused, struggling with anxiety, struggling with depression, feeling a very deep spiritual connection with life, but not being able to live that in my life, especially in relationships. Especially in relationships. And so, with deeper honesty and humility, we can open to a much deeper experience of our lives and to a sense of self that's much deeper, much more beautiful and connected to everything, much more free than the usual sense of self with which we live our lives. There are so many layers to explore in this incredible territory of psycho-spiritual growth, healing, awakening. Let's step into this kind of grounded, wide awake, full-blooded spirituality. This kind of life is our birthright, and I truly believe that this is the path forward for humanity. Not more politics and more division and more this, more that. Not blind belief and not empty hopefulness either, just waiting for something or someone to change. No, we're going to change that. We need to change our lives and transform our wounding into wisdom. We need to transform our social problems into skillful coexistence. We need to do that. Let's step into a very deep dialogue, a beautiful dialogue, and discerning on the path, having discerning and wisdom, and seeing that our common sense has something to offer as well. I invite you to join me for 30 days, a course that's starting in 1 week, discovering your authentic spirituality. Another name for this is cutting through spiritual bypassing. Spiritual bypassing is hiding from life and doing this in a way that's spiritualized. And unfortunately, today's spirituality, a lot of New Age teachings and all that, The Secret and this, affirmations and all this stuff, they become, unfortunately, if we're not really careful, they become another way of us hiding from life. And we have been programmed in our society, in our world, to hide, to continuously deny our pain and our humanity. And unfortunately, spirituality today is full of the same thing. Full of the same thing. An example is, let's say, I grew up in a family where it was not okay to have healthy conflict. Anger was synonymous with aggression, violence. So everyone repressed anger. No one talked about anything. Silence everywhere. Everyone's pretending everything's okay. And we are all thinking that we need to be these nice people, but we're turning into zombies, really, because we're numbing ourselves, we're not being honest. Let's say this is the way I was brought up. For me, anger is a no-no. That means I don't know anything about what healthy anger is. I don't know how to confront, challenge people. I don't know how to have healthy conflict, let's say. And this is the experience of so many of us. Either this extreme or every single conflict and disagreement turning into chaos. When these two happen, what happens is we become the nice little girl, nice little boy. So I'm already repressing all my anger because I'm afraid of anger. Let's say this is just an example. And the spiritual path or spiritual traditions that are heavily on compassion, then they are very attractive to me. And I might then spiritualize the fact that I am so afraid of anger, getting lost in my identity that I'm trying to convince myself that is good. I'm trying to convince everyone else outside that I'm a spiritual and kind and compassionate person. All the while, actually, this is not coming from the most genuine place in me. This is coming from my fear of confrontation. But I'm going to spiritualize this and make a virtue out of this, thinking that I am serving humanity in my enabling of other people, in my not saying anything no matter what happens to me. Even in my close relationships, I might be taking abuse, thinking that I am somehow doing something good spiritually. This is extremely common. And the more we define ourselves as a spiritual person, the more we are invested to having this persona in our lives. Oh, look at Jang, he's so nice, he's so compassionate, he's so kind. What a spiritual person. The more I get puffed up with this, the more this becomes a self-worth resource for me. That means the more I am not going to look at inside what I'm denying as I'm doing all this. What part of me am I choosing to not honor to come across as a good person, as a spiritual person? This is just one example of how spiritual bypassing can look like. I invite you to look at all this stuff very, very deeply and to be extremely honest with yourself. And I invite you to join this exploration. And you don't have to participate if you don't want to. You can choose to listen to the meeting, to the session. You don't have to participate. So sometimes when we join these things, there might be some intimidation or whatever. There are many ways of taking advantage of this work. I hope to see you there. Take care.